My great-grandmother lived alone up in the mountains in her cabin. Her husband was dead, so she was there all alone. She only had one companion, and that was her loving dog. They both adored each other, and the dog was a great comfort to her. Every night, when she went to bed, the dog would lick her hand to let her know that he was there to protect her. One night, she had gone to bed, and the dog licked her hand like he had done routinely every night since her husband died. But this night was different. She had woken up in the middle of the night because she heard her dog whimpering. She wanted to comfort him and let the dog know that she was there for him. So she stuck her hand out by the bed and she felt the dog gently lick her hand like always. She figured he was just cold, so she went back to sleep. The dog's whimpering had woken her up a second time in the night, so she stuck her hand out, the dog licked it, and she went back to sleep again. This happened a third time, and she stuck her hand out and the dog stopped whimpering and came and licked her hand. She stayed awake for a few moments afterward, and she went back to sleep again. In the morning, she woke up and stuck her hand out by the bed, but nothing licked her hand. She thought that the dog had already awakened and was just in the front room. She rolled over and got out of bed and heard a drip, 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 drip. She thought the sound was coming from the kitchen, so she walked over and turned the handles on the sink faucet, but it wasn't the source of the noise. After frustratingly checking the sink and its pipes, she gave up and continued into her bathroom to take a shower. As she got closer to the bathroom door, it was evident that the sound was coming from within. She opened the door, looked above the bathtub, and gasped in utter horror. There, hanging from the light by his collar, was her loving companion. His blood was dripping into the bathtub. She screamed and began to cry. Wiping her eyes and sobbing, she turned and looked in the mirror. In the mirror, she saw the dog's reflection, and written on the glass in her dog's blood, with drips and streaks hanging down from each letter, were the words, "Humans can lick too." I've been lying down for hours now. It's 5:35 a.m., and there's not much I can do. You know what the worst part about my situation is? I'm in the same room as my parents. They keep looking at me, and I can't help but look back and try not to cry or scream. Their eyes are focused on me, and their mouths are wide open. There's a strong scent of blood, and I feel paralyzed with fear. Here's the thing. The second I make any hint that I'm not asleep anymore, I'm completely fucked. I will die, and there's nobody around to save me. I've been trying to think of a way out, but the only idea I have is to rush for the front door and scream for help, hoping any neighbors hear me. It's risky, but if I stay here, I'll surely die. He's waiting for me to wake up and see his masterpiece. You are probably wondering what's going on. I do tend to get ahead of myself sometimes. About 3 hours ago, I heard screaming from the other side of the house. I got up and went to check on the noise before realizing I had to use the restroom. Instead of doing the smart thing and investigating, I used the bathroom first. I could have gotten myself killed right then for my stupid actions. I did my business and took a peek outside of the bathroom. There was blood on the carpet. I got very worried and ran back to my room, hiding under the sheets like the pussy I was. I tried to convince myself to go back to sleep, that it was just some really vivid dream or something. But I heard my bedroom door open. Like the terrified child I was, I peeked out from under my blankets to see what was going on. I could see something dragging my dead parents into the room. It was not human, I can tell you that. It was hairless, with no eyes or clothing. It walked like a caveman, with its back slouched as it dragged my parents. But this thing was much smarter than any caveman. it was aware of what it was doing. It propped my dad up on the edge of the bed and made him face me. It then sat my mother down in the chair and positioned her toward me as well. It then started rubbing its hands on the walls, staining them with blood, and then drew a circle with a devil's pentagram in it. This thing had made what it would probably call a masterpiece. To finish it off, it scribbled a message into the wall that I could not read in the darkness. It then positioned itself under my bed, waiting to strike. The scariest thing now is my eyes have adjusted to the darkness since then, and I can read the message on the wall. I don't want to look at it because it's terrifying to think about, but I feel I need to see before I'm killed. I peek at the creature's masterpiece. I know you're awake. One school day, a boy named Tom was sitting in class and doing math. It was 6 more minutes until school was over. As he was doing his homework, something caught his eye. His desk was next to the window, and he turned and looked to the grass outside. It looked like a picture. When school was over, he ran to the spot where he saw it. He ran fast so that no one else could grab it. He picked it up and smiled. It was a picture of the most beautiful girl he had ever seen. She had a dress with tights on and red shoes, and her hand was formed into a peace sign. She was so beautiful he wanted to meet her, so he ran all over school and asked everyone if they knew her or have ever seen her before. But everyone he asked said no. He was devastated. When he was home, he asked his older sister if she knew the girl, but unfortunately, she also said no. It was very late, so Tom walked up the stairs, placed the picture on his bedside table, and went to sleep. In the middle of the night, Tom was awakened by a tap on his window. It was like a nail tapping. He got scared. After the tapping, he heard a giggle. He saw a shadow near his window, so he got out of his bed and walked toward the window. He opened it up and followed the giggling. By the time he reached it, it was gone. The next day, again, he asked his neighbors if they knew her. Everybody said sorry, no. When his mother came home, he even asked her if she knew the girl. She said no. He went to his room, placed the picture on his desk, and fell asleep. Once again, he was awakened by a tapping. He took the picture and followed the giggling. He walked across the road when suddenly a car came out of nowhere and smashed into him. He was dead with the picture in his hand. The driver got out of the car and tried to help him, but it was too late. Tom was no more. Suddenly, he saw the picture Tom held, and he picked it up. In that picture, he saw a cute girl holding up 3 fingers. A man went to a hotel and walked up to the front desk to check in. The woman behind the desk gave him his key and told him that on the way to his room, there's a door with no number. It was locked, and no one was allowed in there. She explained that it was a storeroom, and that it was out of bounds. She reminded him of this several times before allowing him upstairs. So he followed the instructions of the lady at the front desk, going straight to his room and going to bed. However, the insistence of the woman had piqued his curiosity, so the next night he walked down the hall to the door and tried the handle. Sure enough, it was locked. He bent down and looked through the wide keyhole. Cold air passed through, chilling his eye. What he saw was a hotel bedroom like his, and in the corner was a woman whose skin was incredibly pale. She was leaning her head against the wall, facing away from the door. He stared in confusion for a while. Was this a celebrity? The owner's daughter? He almost knocked on the door out of curiosity, but decided not to. As he was still looking, the woman turned sharply and he jumped back from the door, hoping she would not suspect he'd been spying on her. He crept away from the door and walked back to his room. The next day, he returned to the door and looked through the wide keyhole again. This time, all he saw was redness. He couldn't make out anything besides a distinct red color, unmoving. Perhaps the inhabitants of the room knew he was spying the night before and had blocked the keyhole with something red. He felt embarrassed that he had made the woman so uncomfortable and hoped she had not made a complaint with the lady at the front desk. At this point, he decided to consult her for more information. She sighed and said, "Did you look through the keyhole?" The man told her that he had, and she said, "Well, I might as well tell you the story of what happened in that room. A long time ago, a man murdered his wife in there. And we find that even now, whoever stays there gets very uncomfortable. But these people were not ordinary. They were white all over, except for their eyes, which were red." You get a phone call from your mother. Since her car has been in the shop, she asks you to go to the grocery store and pick up a few odds and ends for her. Bread, milk, cereal, and chicken breasts. After writing down a small list, you reluctantly get in the car and pick up the items at the store. The lady cashier makes an odd remark to you. "You know, we're in no danger of a milk shortage." Upon arriving at her house, you knock several times. No answer. You decide to try the door. It opens. You place the grocery bag on the counter. Strange. There seems to be 6 other grocery bags, each with identical contents. In a couple, the chicken and the milk have gone bad. "Mom?" you call out, but no answer. You make your way through the kitchen and into the living room. Sitting on the couch, with her head severed and neatly resting on her lap, is your mother. Naturally, you call the police, who come over to investigate. They mention that she has been dead for nearly a week. Furthermore, the police psychiatrist is at the scene and talks to you after you give your initial statement. Sitting on the front steps, you overhear the psychiatrist talking with the crime scene investigator. "It's not uncommon for people suffering from schizophrenia to get locked into a series of repetitive behaviors," he says. You think to yourself, they can't be talking about me. Schizophrenia? No way. Repetitive behavior? Do they think I did this? Suddenly, your cell phone rings. Hello? "Hi, hun. It's me. Could you stop at the store and pick up some chicken and milk? Oh, and I need some bread and cereal, too." "No problem, Mom. I'll be right over." They're everywhere. Sometimes they just choose to let you see them. He crawled into the hospital on his hands and knees that day, soaked in his own blood, his wild eyes darting quickly from left to right. He reached out for people, grasping at thin air like a madman. It was a quiet night, and he quickly caught the attention of the doctors. His mutilated body was so distorted people didn't dare look at him. 2 men grabbed his arms and legs and hurled him onto a stretcher. Then he stopped. The man was still. He just stared at the ceiling silently. All of a sudden, he jolted up, shaking violently. He grabbed a doctor's hand and began muttering gibberish. Coworkers stood in absolute shock. With some ungodly strength, he crushed the doctor's hand. His bones could be heard snapping. Finally, he fell back onto the stretcher, still once more. And as abruptly as it had started, it stopped. With his last breath, he whispered, "They are everywhere. Sometimes they just choose to let you see them." To this day, no one knows what happened to that poor man, but it has never happened since. When I was a child, I lived in a rented 2-floor house. Both my parents worked, so I was often alone when I came home from school. One early evening when I came home, the house was still dark. I called out, "Mom?" and heard a voice say, "Yes?" from upstairs. I called my mom again, and again got the same "Yes?" reply. I felt she was calling back at me and climbed up the stairs. When I reached the first floor, I called her once more, and the voice, "Yes?" came back from the furthest room. I felt uneasy, but also felt a strong urge to see my mother, and started to walk toward the room. But just as I was about to open the door into that room, I heard the front door downstairs open and my mother come in, carrying a lot of shopping bags. "Sweetie, are you home?" my mother called in a cheery voice. Hearing her voice made me feel instantly better, and I turned back to go downstairs at once, but not before I had a quick glance toward the room. While I watched from the top of the stairs, the door to the room slowly opened a crack. For a brief moment, I saw something strange in there, a pale face staring back at me. Have you ever walked into a room and noticed the closet door hanging ever so slightly open? When you know no one has been in there. You normally assume you did it but forgot to close it, or you think maybe someone else did it. You open your closet sometimes and look around. Nothing. You won't ever see anything unless you wait until the sun goes down. It comes out when you sleep, ever so slowly pushing your closet door open. It crawls out, low to the ground, on all fours to your bed, and sits next to you. It puts its face up to yours and stares. Sometimes its stares stir your sleep, and you roll around in bed uncomfortably, rustling your covers. It likes to make noises in your closet and play with the doors and lights in your bedroom. Its black, bony hands grab your covers and pull them off you so you shiver. It puts its mouth right up to you and breathes its cold, shallow breath on your neck, giving you goosebumps. The stench of its breath smells like decaying flesh. It will continue to toy with you. It loves to play with its food. If it manages to wake you up and you open your eyes, it will be there, with its jaws gaping open. It doesn't like it when you see it. You're probably a little bit on edge. You've been reading and listening to a lot of creepypastas today. Your mind is racing, and you think that you can't fall asleep. Don't fret. I'll help to put your mind at ease. All you have to do is just push all of those stories to the back of your mind. Have faith in the fact that those are just stories and nothing more. If you see something outside your window, just ignore it. It's just a trick of the eye is all. If you're woken up by footsteps late at night, ignore it. your mother is probably just making her way to the bathroom. If you hear a door slowly opening with an unnerving squeak, just ignore it. Your house is old, and it's probably just settling. If you wake up to an odd smell, just ignore it. There are many things in your room that have an odd odor to them. Now, if you wake up to a rather uneasy feeling, something warm on the back of your neck, your heart beating faster than it ever has before, your body tensed so tightly you think that you'll collapse in on yourself if you don't relax, you could ignore it. But I don't think you'll be able to when you feel the cold metal of a knife pressed up against your back. I've always had a love of music, especially pianos. My family has had a black grand piano in the living room for as long as I can remember. I play it almost every single day, whenever I can. It makes such sweet, lovely sound. But recently, I've been hearing the piano's beautiful melody almost constantly, even when I'm not playing it. It speaks to me wherever I am, in the park, at the store, it doesn't matter. I began to notice, about a week ago, that strange things happened soon after I heard the piano in my head. More specifically, people died. It was on the news quite often. There were many reports of people being stabbed to death by an unidentified killer. I found this fascinating. It was like I had some sort of supernatural power. But soon, I began to hear the music when I was around close friends and family. Before long, almost everyone I had ever cared about was dead. Just a few minutes ago, I found my parents dead in their bedroom. I looked down and saw a trail of bloody footprints leading from the bodies to me. In fact, they ended right where I was standing. I can hear the piano again, calling me. It won't be long now. Every time you exhale, a little bit of your soul escapes. Luckily, you almost always inhale quick enough to get it back before anyone else does. Almost. Ever fog up a mirror with your breath? Don't do that. Every year, tourists embark on overnight hikes into the wilderness of Chugach National Forest, a stunning piece of southern Alaska, returning with a fantastic experience that they will never forget. They relive it in their dreams and go over the astonishing details at campfires, spreading the word about this cradle of natural unity. This ends up sending more excited travelers into the mesmerizing depths to see such majestic beauty that no other region on Earth could come close to. The human mind is hardwired to block memories too traumatizing to process, often leaving behind a non-linear blurred mess. That is not always enough. People subconsciously base their behavior in certain situations on past experiences, which is why such blackouts are automatically intermeshed with brief imagery, flashbacks, inserting mundane false memories to remerge an experience to a consistent timeline. Why do those who have spent extended periods of time in that particular forest often say that days can go by in a flash? Johnny was a kid in the 3rd grade. One particular summer afternoon, after getting off the bus and walking down the street toward his house, he stopped to talk to his neighbor who was standing in his yard. After a brief conversation, he went home so as not to worry his mother. "And just where have you been?" his mother asked as he walked in the front door. "Talking to the guy next door," he said, as he set his backpack in the chair at the kitchen table and sat across from his mom. "What's jaundice mean?" he asked. "What?" queried his mother, confused as to how he'd learned that word. "Where did you hear that?" she asked. "I was coming down the street and saw the man next door. I asked him why his skin was so yellow," Johnny stated proudly. "Oh, I see," his mother said. "Go to your room and do your homework." She walked to the window and looked over to the house next door. She didn't want to remind her son that their neighbor had died a week ago from liver failure. Alice's dad had to go out for the evening. Something at work had come up. He promised her that he would be back in a few hours. Alice didn't like being home alone in the house. The creaking and the sounds of the house all sounded like footsteps to her, but Alice thought she knew better. She locked all the doors, closed all the windows, shut all the curtains, turned off all the lights downstairs, and ran upstairs as fast as possible. She slammed her bedroom door and sat on her bed. She was scared to open her door again. She locked that door and turned off the light. Breathing a sigh of relief, she lay in the darkness of her bedroom, remembering she locked the house down. She told herself that nothing could get in, but that all changed when she heard a voice from the darkness.
"Good. Now we're locked in for the night."
It was only then that she realized if nothing could get in, nothing could get out. You lay there, wide awake. Thoughts are coursing through your head. You hear every little creak, every little sound that occurs in your house. The floorboards moan, and you know he's watching. The monster that lives under your bed. He's waiting for you to get up in the middle of the night to snatch you up and take you to his hell. You pull the covers over your head in hopes that his gaze will subside. The warmer it got under the blanket, the more worried you became, because you know you will have to look at him. He whispers, "I know you're under there. Why don't you come play?" I roll over, ignoring the monster. Monsters don't live under your bed. They live in your head. You doze off and wake at the sound of someone cooking breakfast. As you place your feet on the floor, you notice the scratches covering your legs and feet. Monsters only living in your head? That's bullshit. I've got one under my bed. He comes to see me every night in hopes that I go to play with him. Truth is, he just wants my soul. Horror fills your veins with a feeling like no other. Well, lucky you. You are exactly who he needs. When you're in bed and hear a creak, don't think for a second it's the house settling, because it's him. Have you ever woken up in the middle of the night? It's no coincidence. It's him making you wake up. He knows you're scared of him because every night when you turn off the light, you rush away as fast as you can, not checking any rooms because in the back of your mind, you know he's there, and you're too afraid to look. When you finally fall into the realm of sleep, he'll stand above you, watching. when you're lying on your side, not daring to turn around just in case something greets you. That's him. Right when you're about to doze off to sleep, he will make a sound to keep you awake. When you finally get the courage to turn around, he'll disappear. But if he doesn't, he'll make your death as slow and agonizing as he can. Now, you should try to get some sleep, and remember to check every last room. Sweet dreams. If you use the Julian or the Gregorian calendar, then beware. February, of all the months of the year, has only 28 days. Why this is so is a question that crosses the mind once in a while. It is not a coincidence. It is a hint. If you take the extra days of the other months so that every month has only 28 days like February, there will be enough days to create a 13th month with 28 days. Sure, there is enough to have a month or two with 29 days, but there will be a 13th month in which you can have a 13th day. Good thing we have used a 12-month system for so long, because if the 13th day of the 13th month were ever to occur, you have to know that it will happen. I think this might be the end, for us anyway. You know, man, and all that we've accomplished. I've had plenty of time to think about it since the last time I saw the sun, the last time I'd ever see it. It's not the end of the world, but it is for us. I guess it started almost a month ago, but it could be longer. There's only the clocks scattered around the house to tell me how long, and half of them are dead now. Anyway, I've strayed from the point. It was on the news. A cruise ship sank for no reason. It wasn't damaged. It was just pulled straight down. The rest of the stories soon flooded in. Everything in the water was sinking. Oil rigs disappeared. People on the beach were just pulled down into the abyss. Nobody seemed able to explain why this was happening. Nothing floated anymore. It was bizarre. This filled the news for a couple of days until it just got frightening. It was during one broadcast that it changed for the worse. It was a report from some beach, an on-location report about this strange phenomenon. They were just recycling the same question we had all been asking for days. Suddenly, panic seemed to grip the face of the reporter. She screamed as the camera quickly tilted down. Her feet were sunk into the sand down to her shin. I remember smirking, thinking it was just some overly sensitive reporter messing up, but then the camera dropped. The remaining 10 or so seconds that followed showed not just the reporter sinking into the sand, but all of them. The whole media circus that had descended on the beach to cover the same story. The reporter who was down to her shin a minute ago was now down to her chest. The shot of writhing, screaming, sinking people ended shortly as the camera was engulfed by the sand. The news stayed on for a few more days, but there was nothing to say. Some blamed sinkholes for what happened on the beach, while others argued against them from the safety of their downtown studio. The news was a waste of time now. It was much easier to just look out the window. It was more or less a ghost town outside. Everyone was inside, afraid to leave their homes. It didn't seem to make any sense. The roads and pavements were being absorbed by grass and dirt. Street signs and traffic lights were being consumed by the plants. Houses weren't exempt either. Some people tried to run, jumping from rooftop to rooftop, looking for higher ground. Occasionally, while flicking through what was left of the TV broadcasts, you would see skyscrapers that had become refugee camps. I had made one trip out of the house since this started, across the rooftops. It was an attempt to get supplies from a nearby supermarket, but that plan seemed to be a waste of time. The store was a husk by the time I got there. It was looted and pillaged. There was all the evidence I needed to see how bad this whole thing was. It's easy to be in denial about something like whatever this was, until it really seemed to affect you. When I got back to my house, I noticed something. My car was gone. Well, almost. You could still see the top poking out from the overgrowth and loose soil. It wasn't just my car, it was all of them. Bigger vehicles were still in sight, only partially obscured, but they were going down too. A few days later, my whole bottom floor was subterranean. I had managed to block the windows and the door from bursting in from all the dirt and soil, but it was just a cell now, a mausoleum. It wasn't somewhere I wanted to be. I spent most of my time by an upstairs window staring at the hostile world outside. My neighbor died yesterday. He fell off of his roof and was swallowed by the earth. He's not the first to do that either. What made it notable was why he fell. He was trying to stop his dog from getting out. The dog's fine, or I assume so. It ran off. Animals aren't affected. This is our fate. That nihilistic little discovery was too much for me to bear. This whole thing was a living nightmare. I hit the bottle hard and passed out for the night. When I woke up, my head pounded in darkness. I flicked the light switches and the fuses, but the power was out. I took the flashlight by the fuse box and looked around the house for supplies. While checking the upstairs, I saw it. It was the last glimpse of natural light I'll ever see. I had been thinking it was just night, that I had slept all day in an alcohol coma. By the time I could cross the room to the window, it was gone. I was underground. I tried to get out, smashing through plaster and tiles, to be greeted with a stream of soil pouring out from where the sky should be. I don't know how much longer I've gotten here, in my house-sized coffin. There's only so much food and air. I've got a little bit of light from a couple of candles and a book of matches. The flashlight died some time ago. But this is our fate. Humanity's fate. Our return to the earth. Have you ever wondered about what happens when you die? Well, something does. Your body dies, but your consciousness lives on. The night you die, you will be in an eternal dream. You will live that dream for all eternity, and it will be like reality. Whatever you dream that last night will be what you are going to be living for eternity. And you will never wake up again in the comfort of your own house. And if you die within that dream, you will dream of that dream forever, looking back at the dream, never to dream another dream. Let's hope you don't have a nightmare that last night. Have you ever heard the expression, "An apple a day keeps the doctor away"? Most assume, with no reason to think otherwise, that it is simply an easy to remember rhyme that stresses the importance of eating healthy foods to young children. But the saying did not originate as a harmless reminder. It was born in a frontier town in the early years of the gold rush, where food was scarce and money even scarcer. One August, when a bad drought had struck the region, a series of bloody killings swept through the town. Every night, a single house would be broken into, and anyone who saw the invader would be swiftly, brutally slain. Nothing was ever stolen, except for a few scraps of food. After 2 weeks of this, the local grocer set out a few apples and a glass of milk in the town square overnight. He then hid in the tower of the church, hoping to catch a glimpse of anyone who came by. Fighting fatigue, the grocer waited for any sign of life below. Just after midnight, he was rewarded by a chilling sight. A man, carrying a black bag stuffed with dull, shiny metal tools and covered from head to toe in cloth bandages, staggered into view. He paused at the sight of the apples and milk, then whipped his head around as if looking for the one who dared to patronize him. Seized with fear, the grocer ducked out of sight, staying hidden till sunrise. The strange man had only taken one of the apples and didn't even touch the glass of milk. No houses were broken into and no one was killed. For decades, the town continued to place out an apple or two every night, even long after the apple stopped disappearing. We've all felt it. You're up late, working, studying, watching a movie, reading on the computer. It doesn't matter what you're doing. It's the feeling you get. You're tired. Your eyes burn and have the gritty feeling you get after not sleeping for a while. Okay, you can't go crawl into bed right now, but you close your eyes for a couple of minutes. Try to get a little moisture back into them. That couldn't hurt anything, right? Then you're falling. Like stepping off a cliff, you're in free fall, though your body isn't even moving. Then, like a bungee cord snapping back, you're jerking awake, heart thumping a little faster, blinking quickly, wondering what just happened. Doctors call it a hypnagogic jerk. A natural reaction, they say, to your brain thinking you're dying when your breathing and heart rate slow as you fall asleep. What the doctors don't know is your brain is right. Every time you let yourself nod off, every time you feel that falling sensation, you're not falling. You're being pulled down. And one day, your brain won't be able to pull you back up. They will have you. You are awoken from a dreamless sleep by a dull thud from the hallway. Your eyes snap open and fix instantly on the door. What made that noise? Breathing hard, fear beginning to twitch in your mind, you realize with a shiver that you've kicked your duvet off in your sleep. You quickly grab it, pull it around you, and unconsciously begin to tuck it around yourself tightly as you curl up, leaving no part exposed. You become a warm, safe ball, coiled, leaving only a small gap between the duvet and the mattress so you can see out. Pillows becoming shields between your head and the wall. You are briefly reminded of your childhood, hiding from imaginary boogeymen. But this feels more palpable, more dangerous. Another thud. This time, it seems louder, deeper, coming from just outside. Trying to keep calm, you run through all the things it may be. It has to be the pipes in the wall, which have been groaning for weeks now with ever-increasing frequency and urgency. They were never this deep or loud, though. The blind in the bathroom left flat by an open window. You double-check all the doors and windows each night. Perhaps it's your parents, returning late and drunk. They're always on a cruise for another week. Your cat, prowling through the house at night. You put it out that evening. Despite all your desperate reassurances, you feel the fear turn to panic, and you pull the duvet tighter around yourself, reducing your field of vision to a thin chink. Another, the loudest yet, just inches from your door. Your churning brain conjures images straight from your childhood nightmares. Masked psychopaths, giant spiders, shape-shifting creatures, amalgamations of bone and gristle, twitching their way across the floor, scrabbling with twisted limbs for the door handle, then scuffling in with a burst of speed, claws grasping for your quivering body. Yet another. Your breathing is hoarse and shallow now, mere gasps in a suddenly dry throat. Lungs closing up, stomach churning and roiling, eyes wide and fixed. Your blanket is still tucked vice-like around you. Your body, pinion underneath, its futile protection. Just inches of cotton between you and whatever is about to burst in, eyes burning, talons gleaming dully to claim its prize. Suddenly, in a flash of realization, you realize what the source of the noise is the old, falling apart bookcase in the corridor. One of the legs must have given away, and the tilt is tipping books one by one onto the floor. As you listen carefully, you can hear the quiet rifle of the pages as another tumbles to the ground. There ought to be one last thud, and yes, silence once more descends, and with it, a soothing calm. As you sink back into sleep, you glance around the room, still snugly cocooned, seeing the vague shapes become defined as your night vision improves. Your desk, chair, and television all emerge out of the murk, imposing good, sane reality on the void of night. Then, just before you shut your eyes, you see something that makes the bottom of your stomach drop away into nothingness. There, on the floor, is your duvet. Your screams are muffled. As a kid, I loved making flip books. They were all I did in art class, whenever I had it. I worked really hard on one particular flip book. It was around 50 pages long, I guess. It had a simple stick figure walking into the page, waving at me, and then walking off. I would look at it at least a dozen times the day that I made it. Then it got boring. You know how kids are, not entertained by one thing for very long. I tossed it under my bed and never gave it a second thought. A few months later, I was cleaning up my room and swept the stack of paper out from under my bed. I couldn't quite remember what it was. I flipped through it once and got a sweet taste of nostalgia. I flipped through it once more and noticed the pages hadn't aged or gained any dirt at all. I flipped through a third time. The little stick man walked onto the page, waved at me, but didn't walk off. Instead, a second stick man joined him. It waltzed up, having either an item in its hand or a severely disfigured arm. It's not like anyone could tell the difference. The second stick man walked next to the first stick figure, stood there for just a moment, then whacked the poor fellow upside the head. The stick figure fell, and the second stick man swung his stick at the other man again, and again, and again, and again. What I assume was its blood ran from the stick figure's rather jagged body. It looked like nothing more than smeared pencil stains. The killer stickman proceeded to bend down and tear apart the first stickman's body, limb by thin limb. Once he was done, he bent each one into characters and letters. He set them upon the page to form a single word. He grabbed the base of his own round head and tore it off. Then he tore off his legs and then one of his arms. His zigzagged body parts formed themselves into a second word. What I read made me burn the flipbook. You're next. A young man and his new bride were honeymooning in Paris. They were having a wonderful time when she decided to see if he truly loved her. She asked him if he would love her even if she wasn't beautiful. He told her he would. So she slowly started removing her makeup and revealing a birthmark on her face. He really loved her, but he was shocked when he saw it. After seeing his expression, she left and didn't return. With time, the man began to fear the worst and went to the police. The police thought it was most likely that the girl simply had second thoughts about the marriage, but they checked out anyway and found no evidence of foul play. As the weeks turned into months, the man finally gave up on finding his beautiful wife, and his life fell into shambles. He was so filled with grief. Unable to hold a job or go on with his life, he took to wandering the world looking for anything that might ease his pain. Years later, in Borneo, he came upon a freak show in an old shabby building. He went in on a whim. In the last filthy cage, he saw a twisted, scarred, and mutilated woman rocking back and forth and groaning strange, animal-like noises. He screamed as he recognized the birthmark on his wife's face. It's your first night in your new apartment. Your stuff is still in boxes. Your furniture, with the exception of the mattress on the floor, hasn't arrived yet. The utilities won't be turned on until the next day, so you're making do without. A flashlight and some candles will do for light until you go to sleep. Despite the creepy feeling of being in a dark, empty apartment all alone, you chalk it up to nervousness and try to get some sleep. A sound wakes you up. You lay there for a moment, waiting to decide if it was real or just your imagination being too loud. When the sound happens again, you check your cell for the time. 2 a.m. You get up, using your cell phone for light, and make your way toward the kitchen, the apparent source of the noises. At first, you think somebody has broken into your apartment, but you choke down your reaction as you stare at the figure. It's a middle-aged man, wearing what amounts to striped pajamas and standing in front of the microwave with his back to you. Although seemingly solid, you can also see through his body. You're paralyzed, mostly out of fear, but partly out of curiosity. "Hey," you finally manage to say. The man looks in your direction, turning slowly. Your eyes open wide as you realize the man has no lower jaw, letting his tongue hang free. Your vision loses focus and the apparition disappears. A sound wakes you up. It's your phone vibrating against the floor. It's morning, or at least light is coming through the window. You're back on your mattress, and the missed call is from your mother. You're confused about the night before and still shaking from the experience of what you saw. Was it a dream? Or did you really see a ghost? Some things are never quite what they seem. When one refers to the underworld, we instantly think of demons, fire, brimstone, eternal suffering, and the overpowering odor of sulfur. I can tell you now, It's nothing like that at all. Did you know there's a series of tunnels beneath all of civilization? This is somewhat related to the hollow earth theory. Tunnels weave in cryptic patterns and lead to an entirely different world inside of this one. This world is green and lush, but mountains riddle the land, making it very easy to get lost. You will live among this world's creatures, and you will likely lose any remnants of sanity. But if you calmly and patiently explore, you can come upon something astonishing. You will find the most beautiful person you've ever seen, nude and shackled to a cliffside. They will look very hungry, and most likely they will be sleeping very deeply or appear to be in an unconscious state. At this point, you will most likely want to release them. The chain is weak and easy to break, so freeing them will not be a problem. But they are so weak, they won't be able to walk on their own, provided they wake from their deep slumber. Now, you have two choices. You may linger here with this being and waste away, or you may take them home and live as you had before, only now with a mysterious new housemate. But keep in mind, it would be best to keep your lovely new friend a secret, or something horrible might happen. Go ahead and try to feed them. Try to give them liquid for their thirst. All such things will be spurned, albeit non-violently. They sleep for most of the day. They will not walk upright like a human. They'll crawl like an animal. They're mute and unable to speak. Try what you will to hear their voice. They come from a place where there was never a need for human language. Despite all this, they will seem to behave in a more and more human manner every day, although they may just be mimicking you. Living in the overworld with you, they're likely to grow ill fast. In fact, they may die. There's only one way to save them. Feed them the only thing that they can eat: blood. Any blood will do, whether it's animal or human. Animal blood doesn't satiate them quite as long or as well. Human blood seems to make them the happiest and most content. This usually only means one thing to you. You may become a murderer to see your new pet happy, to keep them content and well fed, and most of all, to keep them by your side. If he or she is not fed enough, they will likely escape and devour whatever appeals to them, only to return to your home and sleep like a full-bellied kitten. Sometimes, though, if the being is hungry enough, it will eat whatever is closest. In this case, possibly the one who labels themselves their master. The last thing many will see is the gnashing teeth of the beauty they had collected and their own blood dripping down their sharp teeth. No one ever sees it coming, the poor souls. They become lost in the underworld, much as their pet was. Their humanity became lost, and now they are no different than what he or she is. Because of those who have ventured to the underworld, these creatures are now among us. They are so silent and only gain the ability to speak once they have killed their first human. But enough of my silly story. What I've been meaning to ask you is, who's that quiet stranger you're with? They're rather easy on the eyes. Did you get a good look at their teeth?